McDonald's workers aren't just striking for themselves, they're striking for all workers. We live in a country which is rigged in favour of unscrupulous bosses who think they can treat their workers as they like. This is a country where most people in poverty are in work. They get up in the morning and they earn their poverty every single day. It's a country where increasingly the rights that many workers once took for granted, like having a secure work contract, are being stripped away. And it's a country where, with an all-out war against our biggest democratic movement, the trade union movement, who represent millions of workers, the backbone of this nation, have been smashed, giving workers very little voice or representation.
What do we want? £10 an hour! When do you want it? Now!
Now, why are McDonald's workers on strike? They're on strike because they want to be able to live, not just survive, and what they're asking for is a £10 an hour wage. At the moment, they're on poverty wages, like so many workers in this country. Now, McDonald's makes a vast amount of money, and they make that huge amounts of profit off the hard graft and labour of those workers behind me in McDonald's. And the very least they deserve is a genuine wage, a living wage on which they can live.
If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it.
The second point, to have secure work contracts. Now look, I talk to young people who get text messages at 6 o'clock in the morning telling them how many hours they've got. It's like a return to the dockyards of the past where dock workers would march to the yard and they'd stick their hands up hoping to get work, often having to go home disappointed. That's the kind of era we're returning to. 0-hour contracts, bogus self-employment with the likes of Deliveroo and Uber. And McDonald's workers are also demanding union recognition. So that's where trade unions, which give workers a collective voice, are recognised, and where that company, McDonald's, has to negotiate with them in future. Now, the war against the trade unions in this country has had calamitous consequences for all of us. Even before the crash, when the banks plunged us into a terrible economic calamity, wages were stagnating for the bottom half and were actually falling for those in the bottom third. What were the consequences? Well, it meant, for example, more and more personal debt as people took on more loans to keep their standard of living at the same level, as well as legal loan sharks blossoming, of course. It meant the taxpayer had to spend more and more money on in-work benefits to make up the difference between what people earn and what you need to actually survive on in this country. And it also meant less demand in the economy, because we know when low-paid workers get more money in their pockets, they go out and spend it. Now, the war on the trade unions has meant that the wealth in this country, which is produced by the likes of those workers in McDonald's, has increasingly been concentrated in the hands of a tiny few.
I believe that we will win!
I believe that we will win! I believe that we will win!
So that's why this struggle is so important. If McDonald's workers win, that will embolden other workers in this country to say enough is enough. Why should I have to earn my poverty? Why can't I have a wage in which I can live? And it will embolden other workers to say, I want a secure work contract. And it will embolden other workers to say, do you know what? I'm not going to be an individual isolated. I'm going to join with others like me. And with our strength in a trade union, we can get the rights and dignity and security that should be a birthright in this, one of the wealthiest nations that has ever existed. And do you know what? Do you know how I know they can win? Because other workers have taken this sort of action with determination, with solidarity, with courage and resilience, and they've won. Like the electricians, the Sparkies, who went on strike a few years ago against Balfour Beatty, one of the great multinational companies, and they didn't just go on strike, they also occupied, and they won. I also think about the cleaners at the London School of Economics, cleaners who had been outsourced, so they didn't have the same rights as other workers, and all of these cleaners were either migrants or from black and minority backgrounds, many of them women. And they struggled and they fought and they won. And I think as well of the ritzy cinema workers in South London who have been on strike demanding a proper living wage and trade union recognition. And in the past, they've had them on the run over and over again. When workers stand up for themselves, when they have courage and determination, and then more importantly, solidarity from the rest of us, they can win. And that's why this old slogan of the Labour movement is so important. An injury to one is an injury to us all. This strike is about what sort of country this is. Is it a country, one of the wealthiest countries on earth after all, where all workers who create the wealth actually can have a wage on which they can live properly, decent lives, where they can have security, where they can have a voice and representation through their trade unions? Or is it a country rigged in favour of ruthless employers who are only interested in profit for a tiny few?
I believe that we will win! I believe that we will win!
I don't want to live in that country, and I doubt many of you do either. And that's why we've got to support these McDonald workers on strike. And that's why we have to support all workers who take the courage, and it's a lot of courage, where you lose a day's pay, where you have to take on management. It takes a lot of guts, that we stand behind them. If we stand behind those workers, then we'll make it more likely that they'll win. And if they win, then they'll embolden other workers to do the same thing, and we'll have a much better chance of taking down this whole social order, which is rigged in favour of this tiny elite, and building a country run in the interests of the real wealth creators, working people, not those shareholders at the top. So I want to hear your thoughts. Are you inspired by the struggle? Are you someone, as a worker, who doesn't have a proper wage on which you can live? Do you like security? I want to hear your thoughts. I want to have a bit of a debate. How do we change this country? How do we make it one run in the interests of the majority, not a tiny elite? Come on, let's hear your thoughts. As ever, you know, we've got loads of videos, so click on them, some of them. Some of them are better than others. I'm not saying I have the preference, but it's true. Subscribe. I'll see you next time.